All right, today we're unpacking what is, without a doubt, the most fascinating tactical revolution in the entire history of football. We're going to track exactly how a few visionary minds completely re-engineered the beautiful game. You know the tactics you see on your screen every single weekend? Well, they actually have a wild, deeply interconnected backstory, and we are about to explore the whole shebang.
To really understand the modern game, we have to start with a massive shock to the system. So picture this. It's November 1953, Wembley Stadium. England, the self-proclaimed masters of the sport, are absolutely, utterly demolished 6-3 by Hungary. I mean, it wasn't just a loss, it was a total dismantling of English footballing arrogance. The English press thought they were just going to easily sweep aside these continental players. Instead, they witnessed a totally new conception of football. And as you'll see, this singular, humiliating event sparked a global tactical chain reaction that is literally still shaping the sport today.
Section 1, the door bolt defense. Okay, let's dive into this. To understand how the modern game opened up, we first got to look at how it was completely locked down in the mid-20th century. Back then, one tactical philosophy dominated Europe with an absolute iron grip, and it was called Catenaccio. In Italian, that literally translates to door bolt. And this wasn't just, casually putting players behind the ball. It was a highly organized, deeply cynical, and incredibly effective defensive machine. Managers like the legendary Helenio Herrera at Inter Milan used this rigid 5-3-2 formation designed to completely nullify the opposition's space. They just grind out results by conceding as few goals as humanly possible. So how did this actually work? Well, the core mechanics of Catenaccio relied on incredibly strict, zero-compromise man-to-man marking. But its true genius innovation was the introduction of the libero, the free sweeper. This guy just sat right behind the defensive line, basically cleaning up any loose balls that somehow managed to slip through the man-marking net. It was a system built to brilliantly absorb immense pressure, but they didn't just defend. The very second they won the ball back, they would strike swiftly with fast, sudden counterattacks using overlapping fullbacks. It was absolutely ruthless, and honestly, for a long time, it seemed completely unbeatable.
Section 2. Profits ignored at home.
But to crack this Catenaccio code, the footballing world desperately needed a completely different perspective. And ironically, the masterminds of the game's most fluid attacking systems were actually Englishmen who were rejected by their own country's physical, super direct football culture. Take a Burnley native named Jimmy Hogan. He believed football should be a game of passing, movement, and control, ideas totally laughed at in England at the time. So Hogan took his philosophy abroad. In the 1930s, he helped shape Austria's famous Wonder Team. By the 1950s, his ideas were the absolute foundation of Hungary's Golden Team. Yep, the exact same team that destroyed England at Wembley. And guess what? Sitting in the stands that day at Wembley were two young men, Jock, Stein, and Sean Fallon, who would eventually take those exact lessons back to Celtic and Scotland in the 1960s. The respect for Hogan abroad was just absolute. Gustav Sebes, the coach of that incredible Hungarian team, summed it up perfectly. He said, "We played football as Jimmy Hogan taught us. When our football history is told, his name should be written in gold letters." I mean, that is a stunning contrast, right? The architect of the passing game was treated as an old codger by English pros, but was basically worshipped as a deity on the continent. And Hogan wasn't the only English exile spreading this gospel of possession. Fast forward to November 1964. Another forward-thinking Englishman, Vic Buckingham, was managing Ajax during a pretty miserable, muddy defeat in the Netherlands. But Buckingham had this incredible eye for spatial intelligence. So right in the middle of the freezing rain, he decided to sub in a really thin, fragile-looking 17-year-old kid. That kid's name was Johan Cruyff. Buckingham saw something in Cruyff's movement that day that would eventually change the sport forever. Section 3. The 1967 Turning Point. 42. Just think about that. 42. That is the staggering number of shots Jock Stein's Celtic actually took against Helenio Herrera's Inter Milan in the 1967 European Cup final in Lisbon. This was the moment the unstoppable, fluid passing game finally collided with the immovable, ironclad doorbolt of Catenaccio. Celtic didn't just try to politely pass around Catenaccio, they literally battered it into submission. Using overlapping fullbacks and a frantic, totally relentless vertical pressing philosophy, they just physically overwhelmed the Italian defense. They won the match 2-1, and in doing so, they shattered the illusion of Catenaccio's invincibility once and for all. But, this incredible victory left a really profound question hanging in the air. See, Celtic's high-pressing game was incredibly physically exhausting and almost impossible to sustain week in and week out. So the brilliant Dutch coaches over at Ajax, who were studying this match very closely, paused and asked a pivotal question. How do you dominate a match when you don't actually have the ball? Celtic showed everyone how to win it back through sheer force, sure. But how do you control the game so your players don't completely burn out?
Section 4, the birth of total football. The answer to dominating without the ball gave us the ultimate synthesis of our story. Ajax took the frantic, exhausting energy of Celtic's high press and basically re-engineered it. They called it total football. Championed by Rinus Michels and his star pupil Johan Cruyff, this was a totally revolutionary system where any outfield player could seamlessly swap positions with anyone else. If a defender moved forward, a midfielder just naturally dropped back to cover. Because of this constant fluid rotation, the rigid man-to-man marking of Catenaccio was completely destroyed. I mean, the Italian defenders literally had no idea who to track, and their entire system just fell apart.
And this brilliantly illustrates the difference. Celtic used their pressing as a sheer weapon for immediate vertical attack, a frantic battering ram just trying to maximize shots. Ajax, on the other hand, used pressing as a means to gain control. The Dutch tourniquet was all about winning the ball high up the pitch and then just keeping it. They traded absolute chaos for a patient, methodical, suffocating siege. Why run yourself into the ground when you can just make the opponent chase the ball all day instead?
To actually pull this off without getting countered, the Dutch introduced 3 closely linked tactical mutations. First up, rest defense. This means maintaining a super secure shape while you're attacking so you can safely circulate the ball the exact moment you win it back. Second, positional play. They created a constant web of passing triangles all over the field, meaning the ball carrier always had safe options. And third, inverted fullbacks. Instead of just bombing down the sideline, fullbacks would step inside the pitch to outnumber the opponent in the midfield. Put it all together, and it transformed the game into a suffocating net of possession.
Nobody embodied this interconnectedness better than the man himself, Johan Cruyff. Listen to this. He famously said, "In my teams, the goalkeeper is the first attacker, and the striker is the first defender." Total football required immense mental bravery. You had to be willing to receive the ball in impossibly tight spaces, totally trusting the structure and trusting your teammates to provide an escape route. Under the system, the entire pitch literally became one living, breathing organism.
Section 5. The DNA of modern soccer.
So why does all this rich history actually matter for us today? Well, because these exact ideas form the fundamental DNA of modern soccer. If we look at the managerial giants of today, you can draw a perfectly straight line right back to 1967. Take Jurgen Klopp's famous heavy metal football, that relentless, chaotic, vertical pressing we saw at Liverpool and Dortmund. That is the direct heir to Celtic's philosophy of winning the ball high and attacking instantly. On the flip side, look at Pep Guardiola's patient, overwhelming positional play at Barcelona and Manchester City. That is the direct heir to Ajax and total football. Win the ball high and then just position your opponents to death. Which brings us to a really thrilling final thought. Football tactics, they're just a constant cycle of action and reaction, right? Catenaccio answered the early passing game. High pressing answered Catenaccio, and total football refined the press. So, if the tactics of tomorrow are born from the chaotic mutations of today's game, what hidden revolution is happening on a muddy pitch right now? Keep your eyes open, because somewhere out there, the next Vic Buckingham is watching the next Johan Cruyff. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and hey, keep enjoying the beautiful game.